All right, welcome out. Here we are again. We're moving along in chapter 13, develop as an ethical reasoner. We're moving into ethical concepts and principles. Let us begin. Point of note, I'll be teaching this class, as I've just found out. I'm in the middle of a summer class, teaching a summer class. Not critical thinking, though, but I will be teaching this in the fall if you're in the LA area, Woodland Hills, LA area, message me. You may want to take the class. I don't know. It's up to you. Or just keep watching the videos. That begins in, what is it? Like September, late August, early September, something like that. They always seem to be moving the dates around. But anyways, I'll give you more info as time gets nearer. For every ethical question, we must identify some ethical concept or set of concepts directly relevant to the question. I hope so. Relevancy is a key, right? So we're dealing with ethical questions, questions of ethics, right? We must identify some ethical concept or set of concepts, right? Directly relevant to the question. Key, right? We cannot critically reason through ethical issues if we do not clearly understand the focus of ethical terms and distinctions. This is a general concept of learning. If you want to learn something, anything, and please do learn something, anything, you need to get your definitions down, right? You got to know what you're looking at. You got to know what you're looking for. You got to have specific terms and definitions, labels that you can use, handle, manage, manipulate, right? If you're just dealing with a bunch of vagaries, not vagrants, but vagaries, a bunch of vague concepts and ideas and questions, stuff like you gotta, oh my gosh, I seem to be stuck on a be specific rant. Yesterday in class, I have a 2 hour, a little more than 2 hour class, summer class that meets 4 times a week. It's almost like full time. I'm not used to full time. I haven't done full time work in forever. Um, but the focus was on being specific. It seemed like every 5, 10 minutes, be specific, and it wasn't just related to one lesson or one particular concept or angle that we were focusing on. It seemed like even if I jetted off on another relevant but somewhat distant concept or term or whatever from what we were talking about, be specific always popped up. I think specificity, that's a $50 word. Um, very important in almost anything. You got to be specific in your obtaining a degree. You've got to be specific in moving forward in life. Where do you want to work? I want to work in business. Well, that's expansive. All kinds of things you can do within business. I want to study science. Again, you need to get much more specific, right? As I tell my students, do you want to write about gun control? Do you want to write about it internationally? Nationally? That's still kind of large for a freshman or sophomore comp class, right? Um, State of California, LA, maybe still too large. How about your campus? There you go. So it's about getting clear, it's about getting focused, it's about getting specific. Specific. Some of the most basic ethical concepts include honesty, integrity, justice, equality, and respect. So these are your basic ethical concepts, right? In most cases, or many cases, oops, I didn't, there we go. In many cases, application of the principles implied by these concepts is simple. In some cases, it is difficult. Some simple cases, lying about, misrepresenting, or distorting the facts to gain material advantage over others clearly violates the basic principle and the concept of honesty. But lying, misinterpreting, distorting, this is generally what goes on if you're online and you're looking at what people are saying politically out there. Are they being honest or are they not? For some reason I got a yellow face. I gotta take care of it. Are they being honest or not, right? Maybe it's this shirt. I don't know. Um, Expecting others to live up to standards we ourselves routinely dodge clearly violates the basic principle and the concept of integrity. This is what they're doing. There's always finger pointing and accusations from one side to the other, but they never look at their own sins, right? Democrats are not perfect. They're not the sacrosanct angels of the world or of this country, and neither are Republicans, right? One party might be better than the other in regards to being a little more honest. But dishonesty is afoot. It's too easy to be dishonest. And it's also a lazy way of trying to get one over on people or get one by on people, right? Treating others as if they worthless, were worth less than we take ourselves to be worth violates the principles at the heart, the concepts of integrity, justice, and equality, right? And this is often done, well, you see it in many arenas, political, business, you see it in sports. Fans are always deriding or belittling the opposing fans or the opposing team or the opposing team players, right? If you're a LeBron fan, LeBron is king, LeBron is the greatest, he's the GOAT, amazing, and you'll focus on all the positive stuff. But then the haters come along. Nah, LeBron's a flopper. He's mediocre. He's been around 100 years. He's only got a few rings. He should have 20. So there's always these. Nobody's ever I very, very rarely, if ever, do you see, well, that's a good point. Somebody say on the internet, well, that's a good point. Let me take that into consideration, right? Every day, human life is filled with clear-cut violations of basic ethical principles. Boom, there it is. Life is full of, right? It's filled with, right? Just go online, social media, a bunch of lying and misrepresenting and all kinds of evil afoot. No one would deny. That's why I tell you, I spend less and less time online, you know, uh, scanning what's out there, surfing the interwebs, just it's more garbage. It's more of a problem than it's worth. No one would deny that it is ethically repugnant for a person to microwave cats for fun, nor is it ethically acceptable to kill people to get their money or torture people because we think they are guilty and ought to confess, right? But nowadays, people on the left, like the Charlie Kirk incident, there was a woman, I think a teacher, and she did the cutthroat thing, and uh, she was chastised for that. And I've seen people belittle or talk lightly of people dying, being killed on the left and on the right. So yeah, that's just that's gross. There's no redeeming merit or ethics. It's just people, very bitter people. People have allowed themselves to go bitter, go rogue, and that's a very ugly, disqualifying, disenfranchising, disabling type of existence, to be honest. You're definitely not being productive for your side or productive in any way, shape, or form for being that oppositional or that derogatory or nasty, right? Nevertheless, in addition to clear-cut cases are also complicated cases requiring us to enter into an ethical dialogue, considering counter arguments from different points of view. Yeah, these days, and I really don't know if it was. It's funny that, excuse me, people talk about, how we're so divided now. Well, this country has been divided many times. So how about the Civil War? They were so divided they went to war. Have we gone to war in recent years? A civil war in recent years? They used to tar and feather people if you didn't agree with them, right? Politically. I haven't seen any tarring and feathering of late, right? In Congress, there have been actual fist fights in the past. I don't know of any fist fights, drawn out fist fights in recent years, right? But there was a lot of when Lincoln was president, they hated him. The South, mostly Democrats, despised him, hated him to the nth degree. They hated him with great compassion, and said a lot of derogatory things about him, nasty, derogatory things. Right? Consider, for example, the question: is euthanasia? That's not young people in Asia, but that's mercy killing. Is euthanasia ever ethically justifiable? Certainly, there are any number of instances where euthanasia is not justified. To consider the question of whether it is ever justified, however, we must consider the various conditions under which euthanasia seems plausible. For example, what about cases involving people who are suffering unrelenting pain from terminal diseases, right? Within this group are some who plead with us to end their suffering by helping them end their lives, because although in torment, they cannot end their lives without the assistance of another person. Given then that a person so circumstance is experiencing intense terminal suffering, one significant ethical concept relevant to this question is the concept of cruelty. Webster's dictionary defines cruelty as causing or of a kind to cause pain, distress, etc. Cruel implies indifference to the suffering of others, right? As you inflict it. Cruelty in this case means of a kind to cause unnecessary pain. It means allowing an innocent person to experience unnecessary pain and suffering when we have the power to alleviate it, eliminate it, take it away, end it, without sacrificing. I'll be all right. Without sacrificing something of equal value. Once cruelty is identified as a relevant concept, one ethical injunction becomes clear. Strive to act so as to reduce or end the unnecessary pain and suffering of innocent people and creatures. With this ethical principle in mind, we can seek to determine in what sense, in any given situation, refusing to assist a suffering person should be considered cruel, and in what sense it should. So, people in usually in political situations talk about how the opposing side is very mean and allows people to suffer, the elderly to suffer, children to suffer, and whatnot. But at the same time, in their own backgrounds, you can find things that they've done or beliefs that they've held or principles and concepts or laws that they've endorsed that are also cruel, can be construed as cruel and also defined as cruel. Another ethical concept that may be relevant to this issue is life is good in itself. The principle that emerges from this concept is life should be respected. Some would argue that given this principle, life should not be terminated by humans under any circumstances, or consider under what conditions, if any, is animal experimentation justifiable. Again, one relevant ethical concept is cruelty. For anyone informed about animal experimentation knows that many animals are subjected to extreme pain, anxiety, suffering in the name of scientific inquiry. People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, PETA, a proactive animal rights organization, focuses on the negative implications of animal experimentation And this is a claim on a PETA website, right? And I'm not going to read through that in the most minute detail, but here it is. I'll pause it. You can pause it and take a look at that, talking about animal testing, examples of animal testing, and so forth, right? And that goes on. Laboratories in the University of Utah, 19,000 cats, some more examples. Pretty extensive information here. All right, so if you are so inclined, you can go through that extensive example. End result, it is clear that a tremendous amount of suffering results from animal experimentation. Much of this experimentation is done in the name of science and under the direction of scientists and other researchers. It is not clear that humans have a right to inf have a right to inflict this suffering. However, some argue that in experiments in which animals' suffering cannot be avoided, the suffering is ethically justified because in the long run, the knowledge gained from this experimentation reduces the pain and suffering that humans would otherwise endure. These proponents of experimentation argue that minimizing human pain and suffering is a superior ethical end to that of minimizing animal pain and suffering. The willingness to empathize, with the feeling of suffering animals is essential to reasoning through questions involving whether or not what degree animals should be deprived of their basic needs, tortures, and experiments in which mainly benefits humans. And aside to that, a caveat is the fact that now they have probably AI has really enhanced this too. They have uh, computer modeling that they can use instead of using actual animals. They can load up a knowledge database, apply an algorithm to it, or in this case, AI, right, artificial intelligence, and come up with a solution, an answer to whether or not using such. And why would you use, experiment on animals when with a knowledge database, you can put information in there about fill the knowledge base database with information about humans, and then use the algorithm to see whether or not what you're experimenting or using to experiment on humans, virtual, not real humans. How harmful would it be, right? As an aspiring critical reasoner, you will need to come to your own conclusions about animal experimentation and other issues using critical thinking. When reasoning through complex ethical questions, skilled ethical reasoners identify the ethical concepts and facts relevant to those questions and apply those concepts, facts in a well-reasoned manner. In coming to conclusions, they consider as many plausible ways as they can of looking at the issue. As a result of this intellectual work, they develop the capacity to distinguish when ethical questions are clear-cut and when they're not. They recognize that they need to exercise their best ethical judgment even when ethical issues are not clear-cut. So true. Universal nature of ethical principles. For every ethical issue, there are ethical concepts and principles to be identified and used in thinking through the issue include, and the principles implied by these concepts are the rights articulated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This set of rights established in December 1948 by the General Assembly of the United Nations holds that. So this is something that, if you see the date, 1948, um, had just gone through a couple of world wars, and how people were treated in wars, during a war, uh, as prisoners, treatment of prisoners. The Geneva Convention gets into that a little bit, right? But the United Nations came about, and there are other organizations that have cropped up to do the United States thing, which is focus on the individual. The individual is large and in charge. There's not a king. There's no king here. There's no kings, king and queen. We are the sovereign. We are the kings and queens, right? You, me, everybody, all the people. We rule this country, right? We elect people into office and they represent us through a constitutional republic, right? And at the will of the people, right? That type of thing. Amnesty International, I used to belong to that. Used to write petitions to petition governments. And you would think, oh, you're just writing petitions. That worked. It actually worked. Sending, signatures of thousands, tens of thousands. I don't know if it ever got up to hundreds of thousands or millions of people. Probably did, but I've seen the results where people who were imprisoned or being treated poorly in a particular country, because everything's tied in these days. Everything's tied in mostly because of the internet. It's not like it used to be. You could kind of hide in the corners, hide in the dark, right, and get away with things. These days, much harder to do that. So countries, right, they don't want to be out there as or publicly known for their violation of human rights, right? So General Assembly UN holds that recognition of inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable, there's that word again, right? Rights of all members of the human family. Nice term there, huh? So this basically takes the concept of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and expands it to the world, right? So we are leaders in that way. Because before this country was formed, not under the Articles of Confederation, but after our liberation from Britain, under the U.S. Constitution, this country was the first time that a country was not being led by a king, right? Dictator. So, and we've become a leader, I should say, in many ways, right? So that's one great way in which the United States uh, leads the world. Disregard and contempt for human rights have resulted in barbarous acts which have outraged the conscience of mankind, humankind. Surprised they have that word in there these days. And the advent, oh, well, that's the original. When was that written? Yeah, 1948. So today it's probably been updated, right? And the advent of a world in which human beings shall enjoy freedom of speech and belief and freedom from fear and want has been proclaimed at the highest aspiration of the common people. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights was conceived as a common standard of achievement for all peoples, all nations. It is a good example of an explicit statement of important ethical principles. Some basic principles laid out in the 30 articles of the Declaration, right? Interestingly enough, the Declaration of Independence was an argumentative essay, and it was a grievance against King George III. And there was actually about 30 grievances in there, maybe slightly over 30. Interesting that number 30 appears here. All humans born free, equal, dignity and rights. Everyone has a right to life, liberty, and security of person. Interesting. The original statement there was right to life, liberty, and property by John Locke. And then it was modified by Jefferson to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So now the world application is life, liberty, and security of person. Interesting, isn't it? No one shall be held in slavery. No one shall be subjected to torture, cruel, inhuman, degrading treatment. Everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of him, herself, and so forth. Everyone has the right to education, the right to freedom of peaceful assembly. Yeah, these, if you know the grievances against King George the Third in the Declaration of Independence, several of these should ring familiar, like peaceful assembly. Instead of the King George the Third was forcing the colonists to assemble in distant and far places, therefore disrupting or inhibiting or limiting their ability uh, to meet and to make decisions for themselves, right? Making them weaker so that the king could manage them more easily, right? Everyone's entitled to all rights, freedom set forth in the Declaration without distinction of any kinds. There you go. That's 13th, 14th Amendment, right? Race, color, creed, class, all that good stuff. So this very much comes from United States concepts and precepts in the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, Constitution. Although the principles outlined in the Universal Declaration are universally accepted, even democratic countries frequently fail to live. There you go. Frequently fail, and this is the problem, right? Um, look, amnesty. Amnesty finds widespread pattern of U.S. right violations. So that's the problem. Just because there's laws on the books doesn't necessarily, like people talk about, oh, this president or this individual has offended the Constitution. They're breaking constitutional law. Well, that happens more frequently than people know, right? As a matter of fact, the executive office has taken on more and more power by not adhering to constitutional law, right? What can I say, right? There is corruption in a lot of places, right? For example, New York Times reported that Amnesty International, there it is, was citing, oops, the United States for violating fundamental human rights. The Amnesty International report stated that police forces and criminal and legal systems have a persistent and widespread pattern of human violation rights. In the report, Amnesty protested U.S. failure to deliver fundamental promise of rights for all. The report states across the country, thousands of people are subjected to sustained and deliberate brutality at the hands of police officers. Cruel, degrading, and sometimes life-threatening methods of constraint continue to be featured in the U.S. criminal justice system. Pierre Sain, Secretary General, Amnesty International for 6 years, said, "We felt it was ironic that the most powerful country in the world uses international human rights laws to criticize others, but does not apply the same standards at home." So that's par for the course. You know why? Because humans are in charge. Humans are full of hypocrisy, blind spots, self-incriminating uh, statements, right? And that's what this book is talking about. We are our own worst enemies, individually and at the group level, even, right? Let's see how much. Oops, I did that. I've done that before. I keep hitting the wrong button, the wrong back button. There it is. Let's do a few more pages. In addition to understanding how to identify ethical concepts and principles relevant to ethical issues, skilled ethical reasoners must be able to distinguish between ethics and other domains of thinking, such as social conventions, religion, and law. True, right? Too often, ethics is confused with these other modes of thinking. Commonly, for example, social values and taboos are treated as if they should or do define ethical principles, right? Thus, religious ideologies, social rules, and laws often are mistakenly taken to be inherently ethical. If we are to accept this amalgamation, oh, that's a nice word. That's a $50 word. Of domains, by implication, every practice within any religious system is necessarily ethical. Every social rule ethically obligatory, and every law ethically justified. We could not judge then any religious practices, such as torturing unbelievers, as unethical, right? So that's a problem, right? Well, it's done in the name of religion, and all religion is good. It's all religion is about, doing the right thing for people. But is religion treating others ethical, in the past and the present as well? Religious members have been beaten or whipped, or they'll do, like in the Catholic Church, self-flagellation. But you hear about the old school moms, uh, the nuns or the priests using rulers or other devices to smack kids to keep them in line in an abusive way, not just a little tap on the wrist or something, but pretty bruising, abusive way, right? Now, is that good? Well, you know what? They're not being ethically pure. And this is a good way to remind them. They'll see those bruises. No, that does not fly. In the same way, if ethics and social conventions were one and the same, every social practice within any culture would necessarily be ethical, including social conventions in Nazi Germany, right? And Martin Luther King spoke about this in his letter from Birmingham jail. He talked about how laws have to square with the eternal. They have to be moral and ethical for all people, uplifting for all people, not just downgrading for certain people. Like there were Jim Crow laws that were just against blacks during the Third Reich. There were laws that just applied to Jews, right? So in order for laws to be ethical, they have to be universal, right? Not restricted to one religion, class, socioeconomic status, whatever. We could not then ethically condemn any social traditions, norms, mores, and taboos, however ethically bankrupt they may be. Yeah, so you got to be careful. Distinguishing among questions of ethics, religious questions, divergent social questions, legal questions, ethical questions. Uh, and I'm not going to go through. There it is. Pause it there for a bit so you can take a look at that. And there's the rest of it. So you can take a look, see at that. Our overall goal, which we hope this chapter will inspire you to pursue, is to become so proficient in ethical reasoning and so skilled in distinguishing matters of ethical principle from matters of social taboo, legal fact, and theoretical belief that you will rarely confuse these domains in your experience and rather, let me grab that, render to each other of them their due consideration, weight in specific cases as they might arise in your life, right? So here's ethics and religion. Religious beliefs are culturally variant. Theological reasoning answers metaphysical questions such as what is the origin of things? Is there God? And some people talk about religion and science as if they are in the same category. They're really not. Religion is based in faith. It's faith-based, belief in things not seen, right? Well, you got to believe in God. Why? Can you prove that to me empirically? And in science, things are proved empirically. Data is used, research is used. You got to touch it, taste it, see it, smell it, right? It's got to be evident to the senses, right? Not just I believe, I imagine, I have faith that God exists. I have faith that when I die, this will happen, right? So religion is not as diametrically opposed as people think. It's kind of two different categories, you know. And religion is um, a set of rules or doctrine based in doing what's right or wrong, right? 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 That's what religion's about. Doing what is right and wrong and doing the right thing, right? Being ethical, being moral, love your neighbor, be kind to others, sacrifice yourself to the needs of others, all that stuff, right? That's not science. Science has little to do with that, right? Science is about how does the universe function. In physics, it's all about matter. What is matter? Where did it come from? What are the laws and stuff like that, right? So they're different categories. You're kind of mixing apples and oranges, yet people talk about them together like they're both in the apples and oranges. Well, those are both fruits, actually. It's like you're talking about rocks and oranges, right? Isn't that a bad analogy? Apples and oranges, those are both fruits. So that analogy is not as good as people think it is. You know? How about oranges and rocks? Right? Those are two different categories. Religious uh, variability derives from the fact that theological beliefs are intrinsically subject to debate. Yeah. Again, I'm not going to go through all this. You can take your time and meander through this in a lot more detail. There is an unlimited number of alternative ways for people to conceive and account for the nature of the spiritual. There, just to branch off of that, there are six major religions. Let's see if I can get this right. Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Judaism, and Islam. Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Is that right? Is that six? Um, six major religions, and if you throw in the minor religions, about 600 religions altogether. Good luck with that. Well, even in Christianity, just look at Christianity alone. There are literally thousands of sects, sects, or subdivisions, right? The Nicene Creed, what did that establish? What is the Father, Son, the Holy Ghost? You can go to the Catholics, you can go to the Methodists, you can go to the Greek Orthodox, you can go, I don't know, Quakers, you can go to all the different denominations in the Christian sects. I don't want to say churches. And there's a lot of difference. There's great variety, you know. So if one religion allegedly has all the answers, has the truth, well, what about all the other religions, right? So that's problematic. In the Encyclopedia Americana, for example, it lists more than 300 religious belief systems. So maybe there's some overlapping among the 600. I don't know how it works, right? They cannot see that their religious beliefs are just one set among many possible religions. And the thing is, if you grow up a Catholic, if you grow up Jewish, if you grow up member of Islam, you're steeped, you're living in that culture, that theology, that belief system. You're ingrained, you're living in it, you're ingrained in it. I don't want to see being brainwashed or indoctrinated, but it's very prevalent. So that stuff does happen, you know. But that's why it's very difficult, if not impossible, to get people to think more objectively, critically, you know, because there's all those influences, you know, there's familial influences, there's cultural influences, there's place and time and geographical influences and socioeconomic influences and religious influences and political influences and influences, right? There's Taylor Swift influence. There's Britney Spears influence. I don't know, whatever. You know what I'm saying, right? So a lot of stuff that come through, right? And you got to beat off all those um, ways of thinking, points of view, because your glasses, how you see things are totally filtered by all that stuff that you've grown up being exposed to. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying it's there, and that's what you see, right? And then what another person sees is another group of those influences, maybe some overlapping, maybe very little, maybe half, maybe more or less, right? And then another person. So everybody has a lot of points of view, influences that they're filtering their perception of things through, right? Careful. That's something to be aware of. You got to be, most of all, you got to be patient with people, right? Religious beliefs, when dominant in a human group, tend to shape many, if not all, aspects of personal life. Right there it is. That's what I'm talking about. Most of these regulations are ethically neither right or wrong. That's what I just said, right? But simply represent social preferences and culturally subjective choices, right? Some may be wrong, some may be immoral or unethical. Like if you leave the religion and the rule is you must die, that's probably unethical, right? Or if you steal something, you have to have your hand chopped off. That's probably unethical. You do either one of those in the United States, you go to prison, right? It is every person's human right to choose his or her own religious orientation, including, if one wishes, that of agnosticism or atheism. What's the difference? Speak to me, internet people, right? Atheism, you got no God, right? God, some imaginary guy floating on a cloud. That's the way I've heard it described, Oh, you believe in some imaginary fake being living on a cloud, dictating to you what to do. Or agnosticism is kind of, I believe in a superior or supreme being, but I don't have a specific label. I'm not adhering to a particular doctrine, right? Everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes freedom to change. There you go. Freedom to change his religious belief, right? So that is a world declaration, again, the United Nations declaration, right? So where if you believe a certain way, you want to switch, and then that belief system that you were believing in says you can't do that, we got to kill you. Well, no, that's not right. That's a little draconian. That's a little archaic, isn't that? Isn't that kind of just extreme? No, that's not going to fly. I think we got a good ways to go. So let's just finish up this page. That ethical judgment must trump religious belief is shown by the undeniable fact that many persons have been tortured or murdered by people motivated by religious zeal or conviction. Indeed, religious persecution is commonplace in human history. True. Humans need recourse to ethics in defending themselves from against religious intolerance and persecution. I saw a couple of videos online of torture systems used in the past, and my heavens, man, humans can be really nasty to one another. Consider this example. Well, there's an example for you can look at that. Furthermore, society must be deemed unethical if it accepts among its religious practices any form of slavery, torture, sexism, race, all that stuff, right? That's what we're talking about, right? So that's the common universal belief, right? Set forth by that institution, right? In short, theological beliefs cannot override ethical principles. We must turn to ethical principles to protect ourselves from intolerant and oppressive religious practices. All right. All right. So I think that's it. As promised, we'll end here. Next time we'll finish up. That'll be a short video, but I don't want to go too long on these videos. All right. So that's it. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.